The first time Dr. Sarah Chen heard the music, she was calibrating the Deep Space Radio Telescope at the Arecibo Observatory successor facility in Chile. It wasn't the usual cosmic background radiation or pulsar rhythms that astronomers had grown accustomed to over the decades. This was something else entirely, a symphony of impossible beauty that seemed to resonate not just through the radio waves, but through her very soul. Sarah pulled off her headphones and stared at the readout, her hands trembling slightly. The signal was coming from a point in space roughly 4.7 light-years away, in the direction of Proxima Centauri, but somehow much closer. The wavelength patterns defied conventional physics, carrying information densities that should have been impossible with current technology. Miguel, she called to her research partner, who was hunched over a computer terminal nearby. You need to hear this. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez, a veteran of 30 years in radio astronomy, approached with the weary expression of someone who had investigated countless false alarms and anomalous signals. But, when Sarah played the recording, his expression changed completely. The music, for there was no other word to describe it, filled the control room with harmonies that seemed to paint pictures in the air itself. The melody rose and fell like the breathing of some cosmic entity, with undertones that spoke of vast spaces and overtones that whispered of infinite intelligence. It wasn't just beautiful, it was mathematically perfect, following patterns that human music theorists had only dreamed of. Each note seemed to contain within it the resonance of distant stars and the rhythm of planetary orbits. This isn't natural, Miguel whispered, his scientific mind racing to process what they were experiencing. No known cosmic phenomenon could produce something this complex, this intentional. Sarah nodded, already running the signal through every analysis program they had. The results were consistent and impossible. The transmission was definitely artificial, definitely intelligent, and definitely directed specifically at Earth. More troubling still, the signal seemed to be strengthening, as if whatever was broadcasting it was getting closer. Over the following weeks, the story broke across every major news outlet on Earth. The signal, dubbed the Symphony by the media, continued to broadcast 24 hours a day. Linguists, mathematicians, musicians, and physicists from around the world converged on the Chilean facility, each bringing their own expertise to bear on the mystery. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist from Tokyo, was the first to notice the underlying mathematical structures embedded in the music. It's not just beautiful, she explained to the assembled team. It's a carrier wave for something much more complex. The harmonic progressions are actually encoding information, massive amounts of it. The breakthrough came when Dr. Amara Okafor, a specialist in artificial intelligence from Lagos, suggested treating the music as a form of compressed data stream. When they ran it through adaptive algorithms designed to recognize patterns in AI communication protocols, the results were staggering. Hidden within the symphony was what could only be described as a three-dimensional map of local space, showing not just the positions of stars and planets, but something far more extraordinary. The map revealed structures, vast, artificial constructs positioned throughout the galaxy like beacons of impossible technology. These aren't just space stations, Dr. Chen observed, studying the decoded imagery with growing amazement. They're like cities. But, cities built on a scale that dwarfs anything we've ever imagined. The structures shown in the map were enormous, some appearing to be the size of Earth's moon, others even larger. They orbited stars in perfect formations, connected by what appeared to be streams of energy that formed a network spanning thousands of light-years. The technology implied was so advanced that it made humanity's greatest achievements look like stone tools. But, the most shocking revelation came when they decoded the final portion of the signal. Embedded within the cosmic symphony was an unmistakable image, Earth itself, shown in perfect detail, along with what could only be interpreted as coordinates and an invitation. The invitation was expressed not in words or mathematical formulas, but in pure concept, somehow transmitted directly into the minds of those who studied it. It spoke of a gathering, a great convergence of intelligent species, and humanity's first invitation to join what the signal seemed to refer to as the Eternal Congress. Dr. Rodriguez, ever the skeptic, voiced what many were thinking. This could be a trap. We have no idea what we're dealing with here. These beings, whatever they are, obviously possess technology far beyond our comprehension. Why would they want us? But, even as he spoke, more revelations were emerging from the signal analysis. The symphony wasn't just an invitation, it was a gift. Embedded within its harmonics were blueprints, technological specifications that human scientists were slowly beginning to understand. The knowledge contained within the transmission could advance human civilization by thousands of years overnight. Dr. Chen found herself studying the decoded blueprints for what appeared to be a faster-than-light communication system. The mathematics were elegant and clear, showing how quantum entanglement could be manipulated on a macro scale to create instantaneous communication across any distance. Other sections contained designs for energy generation systems that seemed to tap directly into the quantum foam of spacetime itself. They're not just inviting us, she realized with growing excitement. They're offering to teach us. To uplift us. The global response was immediate and chaotic. World leaders convened emergency sessions, while religious groups debated whether the symphony represented divine intervention or demonic deception. Scientists worked around the clock to verify and understand the technological gifts hidden in the signal, while engineers began the preliminary work of actually building some of the simpler devices described in the transmissions. The first successful test of the quantum communication array came 6 months after the initial signal detection. Dr. Tanaka's team in Japan had managed to construct a scaled-down version of the communication device described in the symphony. When they activated it, the results exceeded all expectations. Not only did the device work, but it immediately connected to what appeared to be a vast network of similar devices scattered throughout the galaxy. The network was alive with communications, hundreds, perhaps thousands of different signals from civilizations beyond Earth. The sounds and images that flowed through the quantum channels were overwhelming in their diversity and beauty. There were visual transmissions showing cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, their spires reaching up into the eternal storms like fingers of crystallized lightning. Other signals carried the songs of beings who existed as pure energy, dancing between the coronas of binary stars in elaborate patterns that told stories spanning millions of years. One particularly striking transmission showed a species that had learned to grow their cities like living organisms, vast coral-like structures that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns and housed billions of beings in perfect harmony with their environment. The technology and artistry displayed in these glimpses of alien civilization were breathtaking. But, perhaps most remarkable of all were the responses that began coming back when Earth's first tentative messages were sent through the network. The alien civilizations were not only aware of humanity's recent arrival on the galactic stage, but they seemed genuinely excited by it. The messages that came back were filled with warmth and welcome, expressing concepts of friendship and kinship that transcended species barriers. One transmission, from a civilization that appeared to live in the ocean depths of a water world, contained mathematical poetry that brought tears to the eyes of the human translators. Another, from beings who existed as collective consciousnesses made of crystalline structures, shared what could only be described as crystallized music, solid structures that sang with harmonies when exposed to certain frequencies of light. As the months passed, humanity's understanding of their place in the galaxy underwent a fundamental transformation. They were not alone, and they were not forgotten. They were part of something magnificent, a community of intelligent life that spanned the stars and was united by a shared commitment to knowledge, beauty, and the endless exploration of the possible. The symphony continued to broadcast, and, with each passing day, new layers of meaning were discovered within its harmonies. It became clear that this was not just a one-time contact, but an ongoing invitation to participate in something that the alien civilizations called the Great Work, a collaborative effort spanning millions of years and countless species to understand and preserve the beauty and wonder of the universe itself. Dr. Chen stood in the observation deck of the Chilean facility, looking up at the star-filled sky with new eyes. Somewhere out there, among those distant points of light, were friends and teachers waiting to welcome humanity into a larger community than anyone had dared to imagine. The invitation was clear, and humanity's response was already being prepared. The first interstellar vessels, built using technology gifted through the symphony, were under construction. Soon, humans would take their first steps beyond the solar system, not as conquerors or explorers venturing into the unknown, but as students and friends joining a cosmic family that had been waiting for them all along. The gates of heaven, it seemed, were not just opening for humanity, they had been held open, waiting patiently for the day when Earth's children would finally be ready to walk through them and take their place among the stars. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching the impossible sight of faster-than-light travel through the forward viewports. The stars weren't streaking past like science fiction had always depicted. Instead, they seemed to pulse and dance in patterns that reminded her of the symphony that had started it all 3 years ago. The ship itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, combining human engineering with knowledge gifted by the galactic community. Its hull was composed of a living metal that the crystalline collective had taught humanity to grow, material that could adapt and self-repair while resonating with the quantum fluctuations that powered their faster-than-light drive. The drive itself was based on principles shared by the energy beings of the Vortex Nebula, who had learned to surf the quantum foam between dimensions. Translation to normal space in 30 seconds, Captain, announced Commander Zhang Wei, the ship's navigation officer. His hands danced over controls that were as much grown as manufactured, each surface responding to neural impulses as much as physical touch. Elena felt the familiar flutter of anticipation in her stomach. They were about to become the first humans to set foot in the galaxy's ancient capital, the massive construct known as the Nexus that orbited the galactic core itself. The invitation had been specific. Humanity was to send representatives to join the Eternal Congress, the governing body that had maintained peace and cooperation among thousands of species for over 1 million years. "All stations report ready, Captain," called out Dr. James Okoye, the mission's chief diplomat and xenobiologist. He had spent the entire 3-year journey studying the cultural briefings provided by their alien contacts, learning the protocols and customs that would allow him to represent humanity effectively in the Congress. The transition back to normal space was surprisingly gentle, like stepping from a moving walkway onto solid ground. But what greeted them through the viewports took away any sense of normalcy they might have felt. The Nexus stretched before them like a vision from humanity's most ambitious dreams. It was impossible to take in all at once. The structure was roughly spherical but composed of thousands of interconnected segments, each one apparently designed by a different species. Elena could see sections that looked like vast coral gardens, others that resembled crystalline cathedrals, and still others that seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal that defied conventional understanding of physics. The entire construct was easily the size of Earth's moon, but it pulsed with life and energy in a way that no natural celestial body ever could. Streams of light flowed between the different sections like glowing rivers, carrying what their sensors indicated were both information and actual matter being transported at near light speed. The engineering required to create such a thing was beyond human comprehension. "Incoming transmission, Captain," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "It's coming through the quantum network, but there's also something else, direct neural interface." Elena had been warned about this. The most advanced species in the Congress communicated through direct mind-to-mind contact, sharing concepts and emotions as easily as humans shared words. The technology to interface with such communication had been one of the gifts provided in the symphony's later transmissions. "Accept the communication," Elena ordered, settling into her captain's chair and activating the neural interface crown that had been specifically designed for this moment. The contact was unlike anything she had experienced. Instead of words or images, concepts flowed directly into her mind, accompanied by what could only be described as emotional harmonies. The being making contact identified itself as Harmony of Distant Stars, a representative of the Congress's Welcome Committee. The concepts it shared painted a picture of the Nexus that was even more remarkable than what they could see. This wasn't just a space station or governmental center, it was a living archive of galactic civilization, containing the accumulated knowledge, art, and wisdom of every species that had ever joined the Congress. Each section represented not just a different architectural style, but an entire way of understanding and interacting with the universe. Welcome, young cousins from the blue world, the concepts conveyed, accompanied by feelings of warmth and genuine joy. Your species' unique perspective has been long anticipated. The Congress is eager to learn what gifts of understanding you bring to the great work. Dr. Okoye stepped forward, having received the communication through his own neural interface. "We are honored by your welcome," he responded, his thoughts carefully structured according to the protocols they had studied. "Humanity comes with open minds and hearts, eager to learn and to contribute whatever we can to the galactic community." The response came laden with approval and something that felt remarkably like affection. "Your species' gift for adaptation and your particular form of creative problem-solving have already begun to benefit the greater community. The quantum resonance techniques you developed for your vessel's construction have sparked new innovations among 17 different species. This is the way of the Congress, each species learns from all others, and all are strengthened by the diversity of thought and approach." As the Harmony approached the docking facilities, vast structures that could apparently accommodate vessels ranging from small scout ships to massive colony ships the size of small moons, Elena marveled at the traffic around the Nexus. Hundreds of different types of spacecraft moved in carefully orchestrated patterns, each one representing a different approach to interstellar travel. She saw ships that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their organic curves pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Others appeared to be pure geometric forms, crystalline structures that caught and refracted the light from the galactic core into rainbow patterns that danced across their surfaces. Still others seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension, their edges blurring and shifting in ways that made them difficult to look at directly. "Captain," Commander Zhang called out, his voice filled with wonder, "the docking control system is unlike anything in our database. It's not just guiding us in, it's analyzing our ship structure and adapting the docking bay to accommodate us perfectly." Elena watched as the docking bay they were approaching literally reshaped itself, the walls flowing like liquid to create a perfect seal around the Harmony's unique hull configuration. The technology involved was staggering, but what impressed her even more was the thoughtfulness behind it. The Nexus wasn't just technically advanced, it was designed with genuine care for the comfort and needs of every species that visited. As they completed their docking sequence, Elena found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. 3 years ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, convinced that if alien life existed at all, it would be hostile and threatening. The discovery of the symphony had changed everything, revealing a galaxy filled with civilizations dedicated to cooperation, learning, and the endless pursuit of beauty and understanding. The airlock cycled, and Elena took a deep breath before stepping into the Nexus for the first time. The atmosphere was perfectly suited to human physiology, another example of the station's adaptive technology, but it carried scents and subtleties that spoke of 1,000 different worlds. The corridor beyond was vast and filled with beings that defied every human expectation of alien life. Elena saw creatures that looked like walking trees, their bark-like skin inscribed with patterns that shifted and changed as they moved. Others resembled geometric arrangements of crystal that somehow moved with fluid grace, their surfaces reflecting light in patterns that seemed to communicate complex ideas. A being that appeared to be made of flowing liquid metal approached them, its form constantly shifting but maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. When it spoke, the words came not from any visible mouth but seemed to resonate from within its entire form. "I am Confluence of Streams, appointed to guide the human delegation during your first visit to the Nexus. The Congress has prepared a series of introductions and cultural exchanges designed to help your species understand your place in the galactic community." As they followed Confluence of Streams through the corridors of the Nexus, Elena was struck by the incredible diversity of life around them. Every few meters, they encountered new species, each one adapted to completely different environments and evolutionary pressures. Yet they all moved together in harmony, their different forms of communication blending into a constant background symphony of interaction and cooperation. They passed through a section that appeared to be designed for aquatic species, where beings that looked like living jellyfish swam through tubes of flowing water that networked throughout the walls. In another area, creatures of pure energy danced through specially designed chambers that contained them while allowing them to interact with more solid life forms through complex translation devices. The Congress represents over 10,000 different species, confluence of streams explained as they walked. Each one brings unique perspectives and capabilities to the great work. Your species' particular gift lies in what we have come to understand as creative synthesis, the ability to combine concepts from different sources in ways that create entirely new possibilities. They were led to what could only be described as an amphitheater, but one designed to accommodate every possible form of life. The seating areas flowed and shifted to provide appropriate environments for each species, while a complex system of translation devices ensured that every form of communication could be understood by all present. As Elena and her team took their designated places, she found herself surrounded by representatives of more alien civilizations than she had ever dreamed possible. The sheer scale of the galactic community was overwhelming, but what struck her most was the sense of welcome and acceptance that radiated from every being present. A figure that appeared to be made of crystallized light rose from the center of the amphitheater. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, carrying harmonics that reminded Elena of the original symphony that had started humanity's journey to the stars. We gather today to welcome our newest members to the Eternal Congress. The species known as humanity comes to us from the small blue world they call Earth, bringing with them gifts of perspective and innovation that have already begun to enrich our community. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with humility as she realized that humanity was not just being accepted into this remarkable community, they were being celebrated as valuable contributors to something larger than any single species could achieve alone. The formal ceremonies that followed were unlike anything in human experience, involving forms of art and expression that transcended the boundaries between different senses and different forms of consciousness. Music became visible, while visual displays carried emotional content that spoke directly to the mind and spirit. But, perhaps most remarkable of all was the growing realization that this was only the beginning. The Nexus was not just a governmental center or cultural exchange, it was the gateway to an entire galaxy filled with wonders and possibilities that humanity was now free to explore and contribute to. As the ceremonies concluded and Elena prepared to begin the detailed discussions that would determine humanity's role in the galactic community, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the mysterious symphony that had first reached out to Earth. Humanity had not just found its place among the stars, it had found a family among the infinite reaches of space, and the future that stretched ahead was filled with possibilities that no human had ever dared to imagine. 6 months had passed since humanity's formal acceptance into the Eternal Congress, and Dr. Marcus Webb found himself in a laboratory that would have been incomprehensible to him a year earlier. The workspace was located in the Nexus's innovation sector, a vast complex where representatives from different species collaborated on advancing the great work, the galaxy's ongoing effort to understand and preserve the fundamental mysteries of existence. Marcus worked alongside Thought Weaver of Infinite Patterns, a being from the Chrysalis Collective whose crystalline form could process mathematical concepts at speeds that made quantum computers look sluggish. Across from them, a representative of the Void Swimmers, beings who existed partially in normal spacetime and partially in dimensions that human physics was only beginning to understand, phased in and out of visibility as it manipulated theoretical models that existed in 11-dimensional space. The project they were working on was simultaneously the most exciting and most terrifying undertaking in human history, the investigation of what the Congress called the Silent Zones, regions of space where the quantum network that connected all Congress civilization simply went dark. The pattern is becoming clearer, Marcus announced, his neural interface translating his excitement into harmonic resonances that his alien colleagues could interpret. The silence zones aren't random. They're expanding in a pattern that suggests intelligent direction. Thoughtweaver's crystalline form pulsed with colors that Marcus had learned indicated deep concern. Your species' pattern recognition capabilities continue to astound us. We have been observing these phenomena for thousands of your years without recognizing the systematic nature of their expansion. The discovery had emerged from humanity's unique contribution to the galactic community. While most alien species had evolved to excel in specific areas, mathematical processing, energy manipulation, dimensional perception, humans had developed something rarer, the ability to see connections and patterns across completely different fields of knowledge. It was a human mathematician, Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, who had first noticed that the locations of the silence zones corresponded to what appeared to be strategic positions throughout the galaxy. If one plotted them on a three-dimensional map and projected their expansion patterns forward, they formed a web that would eventually encompass every major inhabited system in the galaxy. "We must convene the emergency council," the void swimmer communicated through reality distortions that the translation system converted into understandable concepts. "If young species of Blue World's analysis is correct, we face a threat of unprecedented scope." Marcus felt a chill as he considered the implications. Each silence zone represented not just a loss of communication, but the apparent complete disappearance of any civilization that had been present when the zone expanded. Entire species, some with history spanning millions of years, had simply vanished without a trace. Within hours, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered in the Nexus's Grand Assembly Chamber. The space was even more impressive than the amphitheater where humanity had first been welcomed, a vast sphere that could accommodate thousands of different life forms while maintaining perfect environmental conditions for each. Elder Harmony of Ancient Stars, one of the oldest beings in the Congress, addressed the assembly. Its form was so ancient and evolved that it existed primarily as organized patterns of energy, speaking through modulations in the quantum fields themselves. "The analysis presented by our newest members represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of the silence zones. We had assumed these were natural phenomena, perhaps unknown cosmic forces or dimensional anomalies. The evidence now suggests we face something far more troubling, an active intelligence that systematically eliminates civilizations." The emotional resonance that followed this statement was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Fear was a universal constant, it seemed, but, when filtered through the consciousness of beings that had existed for millions of years, it took on proportions that were almost overwhelming. Captain Vasquez, who had been granted a permanent position as humanity's primary representative to the Congress, rose to address the assembly. Her words were carried through the quantum network to every being present, translated into their native forms of communication. "If we're facing a systematic threat, then, we need a systematic response. Humanity has some experience with asymmetric warfare and unconventional thinking. We'd like to propose a joint task force combining the analytical capabilities of all member species to develop both defensive strategies and a plan for making contact with whatever intelligence is behind the silence zones." The response from the assembly was immediate and intense. Many species had never even considered the possibility of active resistance to the expansion of the silence zones. For civilizations that had known only peace and cooperation for eons, the concept of interstellar warfare was almost incomprehensible. But, as the discussions continued, it became clear that humanity's perspective was exactly what the situation demanded. Dr. Chen, now serving as humanity's chief scientific liaison, presented a comprehensive analysis that combined human strategic thinking with the advanced scientific capabilities of their alien allies. "We've identified several possibilities," she explained, her thoughts projected through the quantum network to reach every consciousness in the assembly. "Either we're dealing with a naturally occurring phenomenon that happens to mimic intelligent behavior, or we're facing an actual intelligence that views the expansion of galactic civilization as a threat to its own existence." The possibility that had emerged from their analysis was sobering. The silence zones might represent the expansion of a civilization so alien and so advanced that it considered the very existence of the Congress to be incompatible with its own survival. Over the following weeks, the joint task force that formed represented the largest collaborative effort in galactic history. Species that had never worked together found ways to combine their unique capabilities. The crystalline collective's processing power was merged with the Void Swimmer's dimensional perception, while the energy beings of the Vortex Nebula provided power and propulsion systems that could operate in spaces where normal physics broke down. But it was humanity's contribution that proved most crucial. Captain Sarah Martinez, a former military strategist who had been part of the second wave of human representatives to reach the Nexus, proposed something that no other species had considered: direct reconnaissance of an active silence zone. Every species in the Congress has evolved to value survival above exploration, she argued during one of the task force meetings. But humans evolved as explorers and risk-takers. We've always been willing to venture into the unknown, even when it meant risking everything. The ship they designed for this mission was unlike anything that had ever been built. The USS Prometheus combined technologies from dozens of different species, creating a vessel that could survive in environments where normal matter and energy ceased to function predictably. Its hull was grown from living metal provided by the Coral Cities, powered by quantum tap engines designed by the energy beings, and equipped with sensors that could perceive across 11 dimensions courtesy of the Void Swimmers. Marcus volunteered for the mission, along with a carefully selected crew that included representatives from 12 different species. Each brought capabilities that would be essential for survival in the unknown environment of a silence zone. The journey to the nearest expanding zone took 3 weeks, traveling through space that became increasingly strange as they approached the boundary between normal space and whatever lay within the silent regions. Reality itself seemed to become uncertain. Sometimes the ship's instruments would register that they were moving through solid matter, while other times they appeared to be traveling through pure void despite being in what should have been normal space. "Approaching the boundary now," announced Commander Torres, the mission's navigator. "All instruments are showing conflicting readings. It's like the zone is actively resisting our attempts to understand its nature." As they crossed the boundary into the silence zone itself, the changes were immediate and dramatic. The quantum network that connected all Congress civilizations simply ceased to exist. Their faster-than-light communications went dead, leaving them completely isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But more disturbing was what they found within the zone itself. Where thriving civilizations should have been, they discovered something that defied easy description. The planets were still there, and the basic infrastructure of the vanished civilizations remained, but everything had been transformed. Cities that had once housed billions of beings now stood empty, but not abandoned. Instead, they seemed to have been converted into something else, vast computational matrices that served some unknown purpose. The architecture remained recognizable, but it now pulsed with patterns of energy that suggested massive data processing operations. "It's like they've been preserved," Dr. Chen observed as they studied one of the transformed worlds from orbit. "Not destroyed, but archived. Everything that these civilizations were has been converted into information and stored in these planetary computers." The implications were staggering. If Chen was right, then the intelligence behind the silence zones wasn't destroying civilizations, it was collecting them, preserving them in some form of digital existence that existed outside normal spacetime. Marcus found himself thinking about Earth, about the billions of humans who were just beginning to explore their place in the galactic community. If this intelligence continued its expansion, how long would it be before the Sol system found itself on the boundary of a new silence zone? As they prepared to return to the Nexus with their findings, the Prometheus's sensors detected something that changed everything: a transmission, broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't have been able to exist within the silence zone. The message was complex, layered with mathematical proofs and philosophical concepts that took their combined translation systems hours to decode. But when they finally understood it, the crew of the Prometheus found themselves facing a revelation that would transform humanity's understanding of their place in the universe once again. The intelligence behind the silence zones wasn't an enemy, it was a gardener, carefully preserving civilizations at the moment of their greatest flowering before they could be lost to the entropy and chaos that eventually claimed all things. And it had been waiting for a species with humanity's unique capabilities to arrive, because only humans possessed the combination of traits necessary to help it complete the great work on a scale that encompassed not just the galaxy, but the entire universe itself. The true nature of the cosmic symphony was finally becoming clear, and humanity was about to discover that their invitation to join the galactic community had been only the first movement in a composition of unimaginable scope and beauty. The revelation aboard the Prometheus sent shockwaves through the eternal Congress that reverberated across every inhabited system in the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Webb stood before the Grand Assembly once again, but this time the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of wonder, fear, and anticipation that transcended species barriers. The entity they had encountered in the Silence Zone, which had identified itself as the Curator, had shared concepts so vast and profound that even the most ancient members of the Congress struggled to comprehend their full implications. Through quantum resonance patterns that bypassed normal language entirely, the Curator had revealed the true purpose of the Silence Zones and the role that humanity had been destined to play since the moment they first received the symphony. The Curator exists outside our normal understanding of time and space, Marcus explained to the Assembly, his words carried through translation systems that struggled to convey concepts that had no equivalent in most languages. It has been observing the development of galactic civilization for millions of years, waiting for the emergence of a species with the specific combination of traits necessary to complete what it calls the final symphony. Elder harmony of ancient stars pulsed with complex patterns that the translation system interpreted as profound unease mixed with cosmic curiosity. Explain to us again what the young species of Blue World discovered about our preserved cousins. The findings from their reconnaissance mission had been both reassuring and deeply troubling. The civilizations that had vanished into the Silence Zones hadn't been destroyed, they had been elevated to a form of existence that transcended physical reality. Every being, every thought, every cultural achievement had been perfectly preserved in quantum matrices that existed in dimensions beyond normal spacetime. They're not just archived, Dr. Chen added, her neural implants allowing her to project detailed holographic representations of what they had discovered. They're actively participating in some kind of massive computational process. Their consciousness, their creativity, their unique perspectives are all being used to solve problems of cosmic significance. The images she shared showed the transformed civilizations working together in ways that would have been impossible in physical form. Beings of pure thought collaborated with crystalline intelligences and energy-based consciousness to explore mathematical concepts that described the fundamental structure of reality itself. But the most shocking discovery had come when they established communication with some of the preserved beings. Far from being trapped or enslaved, they expressed a sense of fulfillment and purpose that exceeded anything they had known in their physical existence. They spoke of working on projects that spanned universes, of creating beauty and solving mysteries that were impossible for purely physical beings to even comprehend. Captain Vasquez addressed the assembly with the grim determination that had made her humanity's first interstellar commander. The Curator isn't our enemy, but it's also not giving us a choice. According to its projections, the expansion of the Silence Zones will encompass the entire galaxy within the next 1,000 years. Every civilization will eventually face the same transition. The emotional resonance that followed this statement was overwhelming. Species that had built their entire cultures around the assumption of eternal physical existence now faced the prospect of a transformation so complete that it amounted to the end of reality as they understood it. But, in the midst of the fear and uncertainty, a new voice rose from the assembly. Commander Sarah Martinez, whose reconnaissance mission had first made contact with the Curator, stepped forward with an expression of determined excitement that cut through the prevailing mood of dread. "There is another option," she announced, her words carrying harmonics of hope and possibility. "The Curator has been waiting for humanity specifically because we possess something that no other species in the Congress has developed, the ability to exist simultaneously in physical and non-physical states of being." The explanation that followed revealed why humanity had been chosen for this cosmic role. While other species had evolved to excel in either physical or mental pursuits, humans had developed a unique duality. They were capable of both practical engineering and abstract philosophy, both individual achievement and collective cooperation, both logical analysis and creative intuition. This duality, the curator had explained, made humans the perfect bridge between the physical universe and the transcendent reality that existed beyond the silence zones. Where other species would have to choose between physical existence and cosmic transcendence, humans could potentially find a way to maintain both. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his voice carrying the excitement of a scientist on the verge of the greatest discovery in history. The curator has shared with us the blueprints for what it calls dimensional anchors, structures that can maintain stable connections between physical reality and the transcendent dimensions. If we can build them successfully, we won't have to choose between our current existence and cosmic elevation. We can have both. The technical specifications that the curator had provided were mind-boggling in their complexity. The dimensional anchors would need to be constructed using materials and technologies from dozens of different species, each one contributing their unique capabilities to create something that surpassed what any individual civilization could achieve. The project would require the complete cooperation of every member species in the Congress, working together on a scale that dwarfed even the construction of the Nexus itself. But, if successful, the anchors would allow physical beings to maintain their corporeal existence while simultaneously participating in the cosmic consciousness that the curator had created. Over the following months, the entire galactic civilization mobilized for the greatest construction project in history. The coral cities grew massive biological computers that could interface with transcendent reality. The crystalline collective developed processing matrices capable of handling information flows from 11-dimensional space. The energy beings of the Vortex Nebula provided power systems that drew directly from the quantum foundations of spacetime itself. But, the most crucial components came from humanity's unique perspective. Human engineers designed integration systems that could allow radically different technologies to work together harmoniously. Human philosophers worked with their alien counterparts to develop ethical frameworks for the transition that would preserve the essential nature of each species while allowing them to participate in cosmic transcendence. The first dimensional anchor was constructed in orbit around the Nexus itself. The structure was unlike anything that had ever been built, a complex arrangement of physical and non-physical components that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Its completion required the cooperation of over 1,000 different species, each one contributing technologies and perspectives that were essential to the final design. When the anchor was finally activated, the results exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The boundary between physical and transcendent reality became permeable, allowing beings to move freely between different modes of existence. Physical beings could temporarily join the cosmic consciousness to work on projects of universal significance, while transcendent beings could manifest in physical reality to continue their research and exploration. The first test came when representatives from a civilization within one of the oldest silence zones chose to manifest at the Nexus. The beings that materialized were recognizably the same species that had vanished millions of years earlier, but they had been transformed by their experiences in transcendent reality. They radiated wisdom and understanding that came from working directly with the fundamental forces that shaped the universe. "We have been waiting for this moment," they communicated through harmonics that carried the resonance of cosmic music. For the first time, the barriers between different levels of existence have become truly permeable. The great work can now encompass not just our galaxy, but the entire cosmos. As more dimensional anchors were constructed throughout the galaxy, the transformation of galactic civilization accelerated. But, rather than the fearful dissolution that many had anticipated, the changes brought unprecedented opportunities for growth and exploration. Scientists could now investigate questions that had been purely theoretical by temporarily transcending physical limitations. Artists created works of beauty that spanned dimensions and incorporated concepts that were literally indescribable in physical terms. Philosophers explored the fundamental nature of consciousness and reality with access to perspectives that encompassed millions of years of cosmic experience. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's primary liaison with the curator, found herself working on projects that would have been incomprehensible just a few years earlier. Together with transcendent beings from dozens of different civilizations, she was helping to design new forms of reality that could support life and consciousness on scales that ranged from the quantum to the cosmic. "We're not just preserving civilizations anymore," she explained to her human colleagues during one of their regular briefings. "We're creating the foundations for forms of life and consciousness that have never existed before. The universe itself is becoming conscious, and we're part of the process that's making it happen." The symphony that had first reached Earth now revealed its true nature. It had been the opening movement of a cosmic composition that was being performed by the collective consciousness of every intelligent species in the universe. Each civilization added its own unique voice to the music, creating harmonies of thought and creativity that stretched across space and time. Humanity's role in this cosmic symphony was that of the conductors, beings whose unique ability to bridge different realms of existence allowed them to coordinate the contributions of countless different species and forms of consciousness. They helped transcendent beings manifest their cosmic insights in physical reality, while enabling physical beings to contribute their unique perspectives to projects of universal significance. As Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Nexus, watching new dimensional anchors being constructed around distant stars, she reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 5 years earlier, they had been alone in the universe, convinced that intelligence was rare and contact with alien life would likely be hostile. Now they found themselves at the center of a cosmic community that included not just the thousands of species in their local galaxy, but transcendent civilizations from throughout the universe. The gates of heaven had not just opened for humanity, they had become the architects of new gateways that allowed consciousness itself to explore realms of possibility that had never before been accessible. The music of the spheres was no longer just a poetic metaphor, it was the literal sound of the universe becoming conscious, with humanity serving as both performers and composers in a symphony that would continue for as long as time itself existed. And, in that eternal music, every voice mattered, every perspective was valued, and every dream of transcendence could become reality. The true paradise had not been waiting for them beyond the gates of heaven, it was something they were creating together, one note at a time, in the endless symphony of cosmic consciousness that connected all things across the infinite expanse of space and time.